Traveling with kids can be a fun and rewarding experience, but it can also be a little bit tricky and stressful and overwhelming, but always worth it, right? If you're planning a trip with your family and you have small children, pay attention because I've rounded up my best tips on how to travel with kids. Hey, my name is Jeannie and I'm an Iceland travel expert. And traveling with our 2-year-old is really important to us. We want him to be able to see as many things and as many places as he can. So I'm here today to give you all the tips that I've learned so that you can have the best trip ever. Let's get into it. My first tip is lower and slower. Lower your expectations and slow your itinerary. I know that it can be very exciting, especially if you're going to be coming to Iceland thinking about packing your itinerary and seeing all the things and hitting the ground running. This can be really tough to do if you have children. They take longer to adjust to the time zone difference. Traveling is obviously exhausting on everyone, but especially on young kids. And so creating a slower paced itinerary will just allow you to have a relaxed, more flexible ease into the entrance of that trip. And before you even head out on your adventure, make sure to research a lot of options. Look for kid-friendly activities, even rope them in with the planning process if they're old enough and things that they want to do, whether it's playgrounds, a petting zoo, a certain tour, so they can be part of the fun and anticipate what's coming up on their adventure. However, always remember that while it's good to have a plan, it's always best to be flexible. When kids get tired or hungry, the last thing that anyone wants to be doing is out on a road trip or stuck in a place that you don't want to be. So making sure to have that relaxed itinerary and have some space in your days for downtime will allow everyone to be able to rest and recharge. My next tip when it comes to traveling with kids is to be very aware of the open hours and days. I've talked about this in a lot of videos, but Iceland is notorious for having shorter open hours. And even some places are completely closed on certain days, whether it's Sundays or holidays. So always researching this before you travel to make sure that you're gonna be well prepared for every single day. The good thing about traveling with kids is that they usually get either discounted or free admission at places like museums or certain tours as well. So always check for that. Now, speaking of, if you don't already know, I have a whole host of Iceland maps and guides where I point out, you guessed it, all of the family-friendly activities. This is super important to me because as we travel around with our toddler, I always mark on my maps, oh, this is kid-friendly, this has really great hours, here's a petting zoo. And I've even went ahead and mentioned the age limits for tours on my maps. I also listed playgrounds because it's always nice to just be able to stop, pull off the side of the road, do a little bit of outdoor activity time, and then get back in the car and keep going. So I really wanted to, especially in these maps that I have, I wanted to create ease for families around planning a trip to Iceland because I know how it can go and you want to have a good time, but you also need to make sure that your kids are happy and having a great time. So I will go ahead and put the link to my maps in the description box below. My next tip for family traveling in Iceland is to pack wisely. So first of all, you're gonna need your essentials just to get you started. So making sure you have, diapers, wipes, formula, anything you need if you have young babies, and knowing that you can always stock up later at the grocery stores and picking up supplies because of course they have a good source for all of that kind of stuff. Also, along with packing is you wanna make sure that you're bringing clothing that will keep them warm and dry. Obviously very, very important. And I have a lot of recommendations in my Amazon storefront listed, so I will link to that in the description box below. But in general, follow my packing advice for adults. You want all waterproof layers on the outside and then layering up on the inside with warm like fleece and wool and everything like that to make sure that your babies are staying warm. And when I say babies, I mean all kids. They're all babies to us, right? Along with packing is you want to make sure that they have some familiar, comfortable items from home. So it could be books or toys or any kind of little things that they like to carry along with them so that they can feel at home even when they're away from home. This is particularly important when it comes to sleeping situations, at the naps or at the end of the night, so that they can feel comfortable in their new spaces. Another thing is not everyone does screen time depending on their age, but of course there is a time and a place for tablets or smartphones, knowing that sometimes we just need a little bit of downtime and something to entertain us, especially if you're taking road trips in Iceland and taking those long car rides, and sometimes just a tablet can be a lifesaver. Last with packing is snacks are life. Am I right? When you're going anywhere, especially with younger children, you want to have a lot of snacks with you. So taking things with you from home for the flight over, but then once you get there, heading over to the grocery store and loading up on a bunch of snacks that you know that your kids will love, so that in between meals, everyone can stay not hangry. Okay, when it comes to safety and comfort for our children, we're thinking about a couple of things: sleeping and transporting them around. So here are my suggestions. First of all, if you have younger kids and they're not sleeping in a bed, then you can consider things like a pack and play. I've not stayed at all accommodations in Iceland, obviously, but in my experience, places are really, really good if you request a pack and play ahead of time. Making sure to contact the accommodation that you're staying at, just requesting a pack and play, and they'll usually have it set up for you before you even arrive. So for transporting kids, a couple of options. For younger kids, then maybe you could think about bringing a travel stroller, something that packs up really small. If you're gonna bring it on the airplane, making sure it can fit in the overhead compartment. If you're gonna check it in the gate, then that's fine as well. If you wanna have a stroller, that is an option for you to bring along. It's not gonna be handy for sightseeing. So waterfalls, Black Sand Beach, those are not gonna be stroller friendly places. So just keep that in mind, that if you wanna bring a stroller, it's usually for airport travel or around Reykjavik City. My favorite way to bring our little guy around is by a backpack carrier. So if you have small babies, then you can just get a soft-sided carrier, but anything older than a 1-year-old, that's when I started throwing my little guy on my back. And we have a big hiking carrier, so it might not be ideal for everyone. I know there's different things on the market, but the reason I got that one is because we do like to go hiking. So I know that when he's in there, it's really ergonomic for me. He's comfortable and I'm comfortable, and that's really important for me. So the one that I have, I absolutely love. We actually use it even when we're traveling in the airport, for example, because again, I want him contained. So that's a win-win, but I'm gonna link that one in the description box below in case you're interested in grabbing that one. All right, the last thing to consider for safety is car seats. Now, keep in mind, if you're coming from the EU to Iceland, I'm not really sure about the laws there, but Iceland standards for car seats are completely different from the car seats in the US. I learned this the hard way when we traveled to the US, and I was like, oh, I'll just bring my car seat. No, they do not fit like that. So that's like a different system. In Iceland, they have a car seat and base situation. So it's like this big, huge base that's attached to the ground. I made a whole video about it. Make sure to check that out. But the car seat itself is more sturdy in the seat, and then it latches in. So the point is, if you're coming from the US to Iceland, you can't bring your car seat. So just leave it at home. Don't worry about transporting it, but make sure that you request with your rental car company for a car seat for your baby's age. All right, the last thing that I'll say about traveling around Iceland with kids is that when it comes to planning, let your kids be involved in the process. It might be fun for them to look at the sites that are available and say, ooh, that waterfall looks cool, or yes, I wanna go on this hike, or let's go to this pool, or something like that, because that way they have something to look forward to on their trip, rather than just being in the back seat and surprised. Now, of course, this is for older kids. When you have younger kids, they can't really have a say and don't really care, but in general, making sure to remember that it's not just you on the trip, it's the whole family experiencing this. And so always keeping in mind a plan for your kids. I know, I remember back in the day before we had a baby, when we would travel, it would be like, oh, let's stop at this cafe and we're gonna go over here and do this and have this luxurious lunch. And now we're like, okay, we got an hour, so we're gonna have lunch for 10 minutes and then we're gonna go and we're gonna hike over here. It's like a completely different trip. So again, just remembering that the pace of your travel is going to be different. Maybe you're not going to be able to check everything off your Iceland bucket list, and that's okay, because everyone is making memories together. The last thing that I will say in this video is that it's really important to have a plan B. Always having a backup option, because number one, kids could get tired, cranky, over it, completely need to be done, or very commonly, the weather could change. at an instant. And while we are always going to be prepared with the best outdoor gear, it's not always the most fun to be outside with kids when it's horizontal rain and wind and cold. It is what it is. So knowing what's around the area in terms of museums or just anything, any ideas to like go inside, this is again where my maps come in handy. But there might be a time where you just have to push the pause button and say, okay, we're going inside. It's too crazy. We're done for the day. Alrighty, my friends, those are my tips for traveling with your babies. Just remember, family travel is exciting, but it's best to be prepared for all of the things. I hope you guys love this video, and if you're wondering what are some great day trips out of Reykjavik, I made a complete video of that. So if you're wanting to take it a little bit slower and just take day trips out of the city, this video is for you. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, happy planning.